I died 7 times, each time, I died on the day my husband proposed divorce. He didn't love me. Our 7-year marriage crumbled in the face of his returning first love. The system told me that if I wanted to live, I had to outdo the first love. Miscarriage, being a stand-in, framing, my methods became increasingly vicious. However, when this path was finally approaching its end and the success rate of saving my marriage reached 99%, I took the initiative to hand over the divorce agreement. 1. When signing the divorce agreement for the 7th time, a needle-like numbness suddenly spread from the tips of my fingers. Gu Jingshan looked out of the window and urged indifferently, "Jiangwan is waiting." He was even too stingy to look at me again. He didn't know that every second I delayed was borrowing time from death. I coughed softly, extremely weak from the miscarriage. I spoke in a very soft tone. "Is there really no room for change? I've said that I can accept you having another family outside, or Jiangwan can be the de facto legitimate wife. I can go abroad, go anywhere. Just don't divorce me." I looked up at him, my eyes hot, my lips trembling slightly. "I love you, Jingshan." I had said these words countless times in countless tones, but never once managed to move a man who didn't love me. Gu Jingshan lowered his eyes and looked at me, with only a glimmer of pity in his eyes. "Shinjiaoui, stop pestering me." Success rate of saving the marriage, 29%. The words of the system appeared in front of my eyes again. A sharp pain burst in my heart without warning. I clutched the bedsheet tightly, my face pale, and pleaded incoherently, "The child, for the sake of the child." I carried her for 5 months. Our child had already taken shape. Gu Kongwen pushed me down. Just 1 day ago, she was still safely in my belly. My most well-behaved daughter, who never gave her mother any trouble. My only unborn family member. "How long are you going to make up stories?" Kongwen said that you fell by yourself, and my husband watched coldly. He couldn't see my pain. Now there was only an eternal void in my abdomen. 72%. The alimony I give you is enough to ensure that you have no worries about food and clothing for the rest of your life. Gu Jingshan lowered his voice and made a cruel conclusion about my miscarriage. "It's a good thing for her not to have to grow up in a family without love. Besides, her mother is such a shameless woman." I looked at him with red eyes, having no more tears to shed, and he picked up the divorce agreement. The obsidian cufflinks glinted coldly. "Those were the gift I gave him on our wedding anniversary." Perhaps he had long forgotten. I murmured in a low voice, "I've already lost the child, and she's going to take away my husband. She doesn't know about this." Gu Jingshan's face suddenly turned stern. "If you dare to tell her." Yes, if Jiangwan knew about this, as kind as she was, she would definitely be ashamed, blame herself, and cry her eyes out, making him extremely heartbroken. She was clearly the shameless mistress. 1%. The numbness in my fingertips had spread throughout my body. I reached out to grab his sleeve but missed. I rolled off the bed and fell with a loud thud. The throbbing pain in my heart became more and more intense. I curled up in pain, my temples soaked with cold sweat, unable to say a single word. "Don't imitate her when she has an episode." Gu Jingshan's voice seemed to come from another world. This man I loved deeply had obvious disgust in his tone. The tip of his shoe was only half a step away from my twitching fingers, yet without the slightest hesitation, he strode away briskly. 0%. That row of blood-red numbers trembled violently for a moment and then returned to 0. I struggled to crawl towards the French window, my nails breaking, leaving streaks of blood on the carpet. Through the window, I saw my husband walking towards another woman. He slightly lowered his head, his eyes full of gentle attachment. The sunlight left a halo on the iris. This was the last scene. My vision darkened, and I waited for death to come. Last time it was carbon monoxide poisoning. The time before that was a car accident. This time it was probably death from a broken heart. I had personally proven 7 times the fate of dying a violent death if I divorced Gu Jingshan. 2. When I opened my eyes again, unsurprisingly, I was lying on the marital bed with Gu Jingshan. The curtains were tightly closed, and the room was dim. The bedside clock showed April 20th, Wednesday, 15:10. "I'm back again." I silently recited the system data in my heart, and a line of white characters appeared in front of my eyes. Success rate of saving the marriage, 33%. I picked up my phone listlessly, unlocked the screen, and browsed my mailbox and social accounts. In the chat box with Gu Jingshan, there were only my one-sided greetings. As for my social account for 7 years, I used it to post daily life and random thoughts that no one cared about. It was just a product of loneliness. and only one zombie follower would like each post, but this was better than confiding in my husband, who was like a valley without an echo, in the latest post. I recorded going to Kyoto to visit a retired craftsman to customize cufflinks for Gu Jingshin. In the post, I couldn't hide my excitement. After all, that was his favorite craftsman. He liked them so much that he wore them every time he signed the divorce agreement. Today is my wedding anniversary with Gu Jingshin, and it's likely to be the last one. Everything started before this rebirth system began to operate. Jiangwan returned to the country, Gu Jingshin, regardless of our 7-year marriage, resolutely divorced me. I walked out of the house in a daze and was hit and killed by a truck speeding through the rain. When I opened my eyes again, I returned to before the divorce. I had liked Gu Jingshin since I was 17. This was the only thing I could do and the only thing I would never give up. Heaven was playing such a trick on me. Perhaps it was giving me a chance to make him truly love me, but how can I save a man determined to divorce? I've tried almost all the methods I can think of. I updated a post, turned off the screen, and let out a deep breath. I walked into the kitchen, took out various ingredients that Gu Jingshin liked from the refrigerator, and had just put them in the sink when I stopped. I still remembered that I started making dinner at this time back then, but he didn't come home until the food was completely cold. Gu Jingshin had completely forgotten about the anniversary. At that time, I was really disappointed for a while. What's the point of doing these things as usual now? Just then, my phone rang with a notification. There was a new private message in my mailbox. Assistant of Professor Jiang. Have you considered consulting a professional? A professional. 3. I decided to give it a try. The counselor was an eloquent and intelligent-looking handsome guy, wearing a pair of refined thin-rimmed glasses. It was said that he had a doctorate in psychology and held a teaching position at a well-known university. To save this marriage, in the previous 7 failed attempts, I had tried almost everything, but he proposed the view of self-improvement, which I had never thought of. It was already pitch black outside. Without accident, Gu Jingshin would be home in 15 minutes and tell me that he was canceling the upcoming vacation plan. I knew the reason all too well. Jiangwan was going to return to the country. As for the anniversary candlelit dinner, I had ordered takeout from a star-rated hotel. It was already plated and looked perfect. The car lights illuminated the front yard, and the sound of a car driving into the garage came from downstairs. Gu Jingshin was home. I put on the most beautiful silk dress and sat at the candlelit dining table waiting for him, and my husband, who had no romantic cells, turned on the chandelier, loosened his tie with one hand, and asked coldly with his handsome face, "What are you doing? Today is our wedding anniversary." I propped my cheek with my hand and looked at him. He was looking for an excuse. Today I know, an emergency shareholders meeting. I was understanding. Gu Jingshin frowned and didn't speak. He took off his coat, washed his hands, and then sat across from me at the long dining table. We ate quietly at a distance. As expected, he didn't notice anything wrong. I pushed the cufflinks in the exquisite gift box towards him. "A gift for you." They were carved from obsidian and suited his temperament very well. Of course, Gu Jingshin hadn't prepared a gift for me. I knew this very well. He lowered his eyes to look at the things in the box and thanked me. My husband was always cold, and it was impossible to tell where his heart lay. A long time ago, I thought he was like this by nature. Later, I found out that he was only like this towards me. "Tomorrow I'll ask my secretary to take you shopping." "No need, I have an appointment tomorrow." Gu Jingshin paused and looked up to examine me. This was very unusual. After all, since I married him, I had no social life outside the family. "One more thing," he continued, "the vacation is cancelled. I had excitedly planned this Roman holiday for a long time, Gu Jingshin, and I didn't have a honeymoon trip. In the 7 years of our marriage, this was the first time we were going to travel together, just like truly loving partners. It doesn't matter. I don't need to refund my plane ticket." I cut a piece of steak and said, "I have an old friend in Rome. I'll just go and have a get-together." Sure enough, a look of surprise appeared between his brows. The numbers jumped. Success rate of saving the marriage, 36.5%. I was secretly surprised in my heart. Professor Zhang's consulting service was actually useful. The first step of self-improvement, learn to refuse. As for the second step, it was cheating. 4. Saying it was cheating didn't mean actually cheating, although my lecturer said that it wouldn't be a bad idea to make a false show into a real one. Once your availability decreases, your charm will increase accordingly. The core of this step is to create a sense of urgent competition. After all, Men are animals who love to chase. I took notes and casually asked, Professor, can I ask you out to cheat tomorrow? Professor Jiang smiled very gracefully on the screen. It would be my pleasure. The next day, I didn't go home until late at night. I chose the bar that Gu Kongwen often went to as my cheating location. He liked his sister Jiang Wan. Since he was a child, he had decided that she was his sister-in-law and couldn't stand me the most. In the previous cycle, he even pushed me, who was pregnant, down from the second floor of the old house. If he found out that I was having a tryst with a man, he would definitely inform Gu Jingshan immediately. I took off my windbreaker and turned on the light. The light suddenly illuminated the figure sitting alone on the sofa. If I hadn't been prepared, I really could have been scared sick. Gu Jingshan looked at me and asked in a flat tone, do you know what time it is now? 2 o'clock in the morning. I looked at my watch. Where have you been? There was an undercurrent surging in his tone. At a bar, I said it with full confidence. Come here. Oh, he used an order tone. I carried out the order perfectly. I threw my bag aside and enthusiastically sat on his lap. Jing, Shen, I knew very well that I was carrying the smell of another man. Jiang Zhihui had good taste in this regard. The three-piece suit of an academic, the woody perfume of a gentle scum, and the thrilling contrast when he took off his glasses. Gu Jingshan also smelled it. He slightly turned his face away and looked at me coldly. What did you do? I put my arms around his neck, got closer, and lied without blinking. It was just a high school class reunion, didn't I tell you? In my social circle, no one knew about my marriage to Gu Jingshan. Back then, the family forcefully separated him from Jiang Wan. Jiang Wan didn't care at all and left chicly. He then married me, who had no background. Out of revenge, my mother-in-law's compromise was, family scandals should not be made public. I was not allowed to claim my identity as the daughter-in-law of the Gu family outside. As for him himself, I was not a partner worthy of boasting. As a result, he naturally never showed up in front of my friends. They didn't know I was married and even introduced a boyfriend to me. I really couldn't so I had a couple of drinks with him. Gu Jingshan's brows twitched slightly, and displeasure was written on his face. Just as he was about to say something I laughed drunkenly, left a bright red lipstick mark on his cheek, and got up to leave. I'm going to take a shower. You should go to bed early too. Success rate of saving the marriage, 41%. As soon as I entered the bathroom, Jiang Zhihui sent a message. I'll pick you up on Sunday. 5. I had always been unconfident about my appearance. There were no shortage of beautiful faces around Gu Jingshan, not to mention how radiant that first love, Jiang Wan, was. In the 7 years since I married him, he had never expressed any appreciation for my appearance as if he had in other aspects. I examined my face. According to Professor Zhang's suggestion, I changed my hairstyle. My long hair was permed into soft curls. I also changed my daily dressing style. On Sunday, in front of the mirror in the fitting room, Jiang Zhihui stood behind me on the side, both of us gazing at the completely new woman in the mirror. He said that if my husband was still unmoved, I might as well turn to other options. Sorry, Professor Jiang. I looked into his eyes and replied ruthlessly, I'm not going to divorce. The two are not in conflict, the professor said. Behind the lenses, he blinked. Gu Jingshan was indeed a bottomless abyss of darkness. But if I fell into the hands of this fox, I would be eaten without even the bones left. Being caught in a death loop, it's better not to create more trouble for myself. I gave him a fake smile. I'll consider it. As if I had the life to consider. 6. Previously, Gu Jingshan simply ignored the changes in me. At that time, according to online tutorials, I bought a wardrobe full of marriageable-style clothes. Not only was I completely ignored by Gu Jingshan, but Gu Kongwen also said that I looked like a moving wedding arch. This time, things changed. I no longer sent him messages, no longer ironed his suits, no longer waited anxiously with a table full of food, no longer invited him to fulfill his husbandly duties, no longer obeyed him in every way and was overly cautious. He actually wanted to take me to a gathering of his childhood friends. In countless previous cycles, I could only stay at home alone or cook for them in the kitchen. This time, I was dressed up beautifully and stood side by side with him in front of the door. A well-known playboy among the friends looked me up and down, his eyes seemingly hooked, and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law is getting more and more beautiful." The hand he had around my waist suddenly tightened a bit. If it were the me from before, I don't know how overjoyed I would have been, but at this moment, I reflexively checked the system data. Success rate of saving the marriage, 47%, very good. Very good, Jiang Zhihui. It was like I had been given a shot of a cardiac stimulant. During the following gathering, I exerted all my efforts to exude charm. Self-improvement was not just about superficially enhancing one's appearance. With the help of Professor Jiang, I crammed all kinds of knowledge about high society and Gu Jingshan's industry. I studied as hard as an examinee, often memorizing books until late at night. Naturally, I no longer had time to be his full-time maid as I used to. Hard work pays off. Finally, I was able to join in their conversations. Speaking of which, before marrying Gu Jingshan, I was actually a talkative person. I had even forgotten that myself. Amid the flattery and attentiveness of a group of wealthy young masters, Gu Jingshan drank casually while looking at me, his eyes very deep. 7. Only when I actually did it did I realize how easy it was to arouse a man's jealousy. Recently, the frequency of my meetings with Jiang Zhihui was getting higher and higher, not to mention the exchange of messages. It wasn't just about classes or things related to Gu Jingshan. More often, it was just chatting. He spoke with a faint sense of black humor, which I really liked. After reading the latest message, I couldn't help laughing and replied while tapping on the phone screen. Gu Jingshan put down his knife and fork, and the cutlery made a soft clinking sound. I didn't even notice when he got up and walked behind me. How could that be? Everything was within my plan. He propped one hand on the edge of the table and leaned down halfway, almost enveloping me in his arms. Who is it? Just a friend I met a few months ago, I said without changing my expression. Last time I had hypoglycemia on the side of the road, and he was kind enough to take me home. Friend. Gu Jingshan gently repeated the word. Was it him at the bar that day too? Yeah. Why didn't you call me? I hesitated before answering. I did. You said you were busy. Gu Jingshan was silent for a moment. I shook the screen in front of him, with a little excitement in my tone. Jingshan, we made an appointment to go to the movies next week. It's that one you said you weren't interested in before. I'll go with you. I loved watching movies and had worked in the film industry before getting married. But Gu Jingshan always thought that watching movies was a waste of time. Maybe he would be willing to watch them with Jiang Wan. For the people we love, we always feel that we haven't wasted enough time. And now, the phone vibrated, and Professor Jiang sent another message. Same place again. Gu Jingshan took the phone from my hand, looked at me with deep eyes, and sent a voice message expressionlessly. I'm Xin Zhaoi's husband. There's no need to contact her anymore. He deleted and blocked the contact in one go. I stared at him with wide eyes. Jealousy and possessiveness were important components of love. Could it be that Gu Jingshan was really about to fall in love with me? The stock market was falling all the way, but the success rate of saving my marriage climbed to a new high in history, 67%. The day when Jiang Wan returned to the country was finally approaching. 8. The thing about Rome was just a lie. How could I have friends in Italy? Even if I did, I wouldn't miss this most important time point. Before, I had tried various ways to stop Gu Jingshan from going to pick up Jiang Wan at the airport. For example, begging, going crazy, faking illness, puncturing the car tires, and even deliberately breaking my own arm. None of them worked. This time, I would face it head on. Now I was no longer the Xin Zhaoi who only knew how to endure. I hired a professional styling team and put on the most expensive high-end custom-made suit. The person in the mirror was polished to perfection. Even the stylist couldn't stop praising. Miss Shen is just like a female celebrity. Since I was like a female celebrity, I would go with the mentality of outshining others. I took Gu Jingshan's arm and stood at the airport pick-up gate, with my neck straight, as if I were under the curtain of an award-giving ceremony. My handsome co-star looked down at me and tucked the curly hair beside my ear behind it. 67.5%. My confidence had never been so high, nor had my heart rate. From a distance, I saw Jiang Wan at a glance. She was tall and very conspicuous in the crowd. Her experience of living in the Americas had made her cut her hair short, and her skin had also darkened a few shades. Her image was almost unkempt. She had no makeup on, dressed extremely simply, and the lines of her arms exposed outside the white t-shirt were tight, with obvious signs of exercise. After 7 years, she was completely different from how she was in college. Gu Jingshan least liked this type of woman. He had always liked women who were delicate, charming, mature, and feminine, like Jiang Wan 7 years ago. And like me, Jiang Wan was getting closer and closer, and her eyes were very bright. At a certain moment, I felt that she was an approaching comet. For some inexplicable reason, static electricity kicked in, and the hairs on my body stood up. She walked towards us. The words of the system appeared in front of my eyes: success rate of saving the marriage. I stared fixedly at that line of numbers, and my heartbeat was deafening. Change, quickly, prove my success, change quickly. The numbers trembled and changed violently, leaving afterimages as if there was a system malfunction. After what seemed like a century, it was finally readable again. 33.5%. Wait a minute, there must be something wrong with the system. My face turned pale, and in an instant, cold sweat seeped through my temples. The makeup powder congealed and flowed down like lead-colored blood. Gu Jingshan stared fixedly at Jiangwan. It seemed that nothing could make him look away anymore. My numbers jumped again. 3.5%. It turned out that just one look at her was enough for me to face complete failure. 9. I opened my eyes. Defeat was like a mountain collapsing. This time was not very different from before, except that the way it ended was much gentler. There was no entanglement, no miscarriage, no hysterical farce. Gu Jingshan was a generous husband and naturally a generous ex-husband. We could be said to have a peaceful breakup. After all, I had been completely devastated by the blow. If it weren't for the extremely bloody death CG, I would even feel that this was an acceptable ending. Yes, I could accept divorce. Loving Gu Jingshan was the only thing I had been able to do so far, but it was no longer something I would never give up. Because Sisyphus Boulder had already broken my hands, I slowly got up from the bed. Death seemed to have brought some kind of change. I felt a tired black hole appear deep within my body. I picked up my phone. As soon as I opened the social platform, I saw a middle-aged woman kindly imparting marital wisdom to the camera. Sometimes the problem doesn't lie with your loved one or the third party, but with yourself. I couldn't help laughing. What nonsense. In one of the previous cycles, I had even bought her courses. If the problem was with me, my smile suddenly froze. The problem, indeed, lay with myself, because I had completely misunderstood one thing: Gu Jingshan was doomed not to love me. 10. In the previous 8 cycles, I had been going around in circles, hitting the iceberg, and sinking the ship on the wrong route. If I had to say, among all the bad ideas I had adopted, the worst one was being Jiangwan's stand-in. There was no more imitation show than that. I searched for all the information related to her, hired a private detective to investigate her privacy, and even watched the videos of her that Gu Jingshan treasured over and over again. She was a well-known musical genius. I had also learned the piano for a few years, so I practiced hard the piece she played on stage when she first met Gu Jingshan, until my fingertips became calloused. I realized the gap between people. The piano teacher praised me a lot, but I knew in my heart that I couldn't even reach 1% of her standard. When she talked, her eyes always stared at people intently, shining like stars. I practiced my gaze hard, even signing up for several acting training classes until Gu Jingshan would be in a daze when looking into my eyes. She was tall with a very beautiful waistline and had been scouted to be a model. 7 years later, even without any makeup, she still stood out from the crowd. Since my natural conditions couldn't be changed, I secretly went to a private hospital to have my ribs removed while Gu Jingshan was abroad attending business activities for several months, making my waist a full circle thinner. When the stitches were removed, I looked at the blue-purple area on my ribs in the mirror. I thought I would cry, but my eyes just burned red. Your waist. On the night he returned from abroad, Gu Jingshan hugged me from behind and asked in a low voice, "Why has it become so much thinner?" At that moment, I suppressed the strong urge to retch for no reason. Needless to say, the ending of a fake was that I was smashed to pieces by the hammer on an antique appraisal show. I had thought about becoming Jiangwan, but I had never thought of another possibility. There was clearly a correct solution to my marriage crisis. If he could only love Jiangwan, then I would ruin Jiangwan. 11. Jiangwan was very friendly to me. Maybe she was like that to everyone. Gu Jingshan held a welcome-back dinner for her and booked the best French restaurant in the city. She didn't seem to have a good appetite and didn't eat much. When we were parting in front of the restaurant, her stomach rumbled embarrassingly twice, so I suggested that she come home with us, and I would cook some supper for her myself. Gu Jingshan, who was already reluctant to part, naturally couldn't wish for more. Jiangwan hesitated for a moment, and under my calm and sincere gaze, she finally nodded. I cooked, and she insisted on helping. Rather, she was more of a hindrance. This woman was proficient in all kinds of arts, but she was extremely clumsy when it came to cooking. Coming from Suzhou and Hangzhou, she had a light taste, so I carefully washed the vegetables, scrambled the eggs, and cooked a bowl of fragrant water shield and whitebait soup. Jiangwan stood very close to me. I could almost hear her swallowing saliva. My goodness, it smells so good. I haven't eaten this for 7 years. Just like that, she walked into my hangmen banquet without any precautions. I said lightly, "It's ready," and picked up the bowl. She happily reached out to take it. At the moment of handover, I deliberately let go of the bowl. The bowl suddenly overturned, and the steaming hot soup splashed over. Her hand immediately blistered red. This pain was nothing to someone who had died 8 times, so the cry of pain that escaped my mouth was completely acting. Jiangwan was startled, and Gu Jingshan also came over when he heard the sound. He quickly glanced at the messy floor and took my wrist to rinse it under the faucet. "I'm sorry," Jiangwan's voice sounded from behind, weak and lacking confidence. I didn't hold it steady. "Where's the first aid kit?" "No, I'd better call an ambulance." She was really making a big deal out of nothing. I held back my tears, raised my wet eyelashes, and looked at the silent Gu Jingshan. "It's okay, Miss Jiang didn't mean it." In the end, we still called an ambulance to deal with my burn, taking up medical resources. After Jiangwan left, I deliberately behaved very unnaturally. When going to bed, I even turned my back to Gu Jingshan, lying very far away from him, which was very unusual. "What's wrong?" he finally asked in a low voice. I didn't say anything, just made my shoulders tremble as if I were crying. "Tell me." So I sobbed realistically. Miss Jiang said this was a lesson for me. Gu Jingshan was silent. I then checked the system data. A quarter of an hour later, just when I thought he had fallen asleep, my success rate increased by 10 percentage points. 12. That day, Jiangwan added my contact information and forwarded nearly a dozen blog posts related to burns that night. A few days later, before I even had a chance to go to her, this stupid woman actually came to apologize on her own. She was carrying gift bags in both hands. After putting them down, she went to the car to get some more. It was really exaggerated. I casually inspected the gifts: burn ointment, scar removing gel, a beautiful atlas of geography, a bowl exactly the same as the one that was broken, and compared to them, rather rough-looking baked cookies. There was also a silk scarf. Jiangwan said that the dress I wore when picking up the plane was very beautiful. At that time, she was thinking that it would match such a pure white silk scarf very well. In the last box lay a simple, shaped wooden carving ornament. It was a souvenir made by the children themselves when she was volunteering in South America. I said gently, "I like them so much. I want to put them in the bedroom. But, these are too many. I just got a minor injury. You don't have to take it to heart. Today is also your birthday," Jiangwan said. After a pause, she added, "Actually, I saw you at this time last year." Last year, she saw me. I came back to deal with some things and only stayed for 2 days, so I didn't tell anyone. It was around 11:30 at night. I passed by that convenience store on the corner and saw you sitting alone in front of the glass, eating takoyaki. There was a cream cake in front of you, and there was also a birthday candle stuck in it. I originally wanted to knock on the glass and wish you a happy birthday, but I felt that you probably didn't want to be disturbed. I froze in place. It was a stormy night. Gu Jingshan said on the phone that he had to fly to Hong Kong temporarily. The convenience store clerk sold me the last expired cake. The cheap cream had collapsed into a mess. I ate the takoyaki, and my tears kept falling into the soup, because of the long death and rebirth in between. For me, even the dampness on my face that night was already a very long ago thing. I was silent for a long time until Jiangwan's eyes became worried. "Can Miss Jiang help me take this up?" I said. "This wooden carving." She looked down at my right hand wrapped in a bandage. Of course. 13. The steps of the old house creaked under our feet. Jiangwan, holding the wooden carving, walked in front of me. Her short hair swayed and brushed against the back of her neck. "Jiangwan," I called her. She turned around. "I'm sorry. I really meant it. I'm sorry." A somewhat puzzled expression froze on her face. I let go of the handrail and rolled down the stairs amidst Jiangwan's scream. In the dull thud of the back of my head hitting the floor, I vaguely heard Gu Jingshan's voice. "How long are you going to make up stories? Kongwen said that you fell by yourself." "Yes, I did have a miscarriage once. I was pushed downstairs and could only desperately and hopelessly protect my bulging belly. I was like a kicked-down dog, lying on the ground, begging my husband's dear younger brother to call an ambulance. That time was real, but in Gu Jingshan's eyes, it was just a lie. I punctured the blood bag I had hidden in my pocket beforehand, in Jiangwan's disbelieving eyes. A pool of bright red blood slowly seeped out from under me. Gu Jingshan was at home today. Naturally, he didn't remember my birthday and was just having a video conference in the study, and this time, when he walked out of the room, he happened to see the lie I had carefully prepared for him. The victim was still standing dumbly at the top of the stairs, looking at me with a pale face. The wooden, carved bird in her arms had fallen to the ground and broken in half. At the end of the day, in his arms, I cried bitterly. The child, Jingshan, the child, 14, I had already bribed the doctor, and he would give Gu Jingshan a flawless miscarriage report. I was lying on the hospital bed, staring straight at the light green, painted ceiling of the hospital. Only the bruised forehead and leg bones were still aching faintly. Through the wall, there were faint sounds of an argument. I pulled out the indwelling needle in my left hand, got out of bed, and limped out of the room. The voices were Gu Jingshan and Jiang Wan. They were talking in the empty ward next door. Why did you treat her like this? I don't love her at all. Gu Jingshan's voice was suppressed with anger. I leaned against the cold wall. Surprisingly, I felt no waves in my heart about the fact that Gu Jingshan had said. Jiang Wan smiled softly. Have you ever trusted me even a little? There was a moment of silence in the room, and the door suddenly opened. Not surprisingly, it was Jiang Wan carrying a bag. Jiang Wan took a deep look at me. I looked back at her. Now, the urge to retch welled up in my throat again. Love means nothing to you, but Jiang Wan, without him, I will die. I will really die. Everything I did was just to survive. I was so disgusting. The nurse pushing the dressing change cart was walking towards us. Jiang Wan passed by her, and her figure disappeared at the end of the corridor. I thought I would never see her again in this life, but there was a sudden rush of footsteps behind me. It seemed that I wasn't the only one who realized this. Gu Jingshan chased after her. The corner of his clothes brought up a gust of wind. He pushed aside the dressing change cart blocking the way. The bottles and jars clanged, attracting a sharp rebuke from the nurse. He didn't see me, but I saw him clearly. On that face was an expression of blankness due to anxiety, an expression of wanting to save something, an expression I had never seen before. 15. I opened my eyes and touched my neck. It was intact. This system, fate, or whatever it was, had a great imagination for ways of death. So far, there had been no repetitions, but the track of the small ball rolling remained unchanged, diving towards the fated ending. I was invited to play this pinball machine that could never be won, even if I was the completely innocent victim in the script. Gu Jingshan would break through the shackles of morality and run towards his beloved, if I end my life before the divorce. Can I welcome eternal peace? I began to seriously think about this question. On the social platform, the kind-looking woman said, a child is the crystallization of love and the bond of a family. With a child, a man will eventually return to your side. This is the power of life. The phone was lying beside me. This half-minute video was playing on loop. The fluorescence illuminated the dark ceiling. Like a scene from a horror movie, Gu Jingshan was a fortress that I couldn't conquer. Pregnancy, miscarriage, and even suicide were all useless to him. The so-called power of life only Jiang Wan would dash. Wait, only Jiang Wan would. 16. Let's go to Sangala. I held down Gu Jingshan's hand that was starting the car. I suddenly want to eat whitebait soup. Jiang Wan, who was fastening her seatbelt, paused for a moment. Gu Jingshan also glanced at me through the rear view mirror and slightly frowned. I've already made a reservation dash. I want to eat it too. Jiang Wan sounded very happy, just like that night. It's been 7 years since I last ate it, so he changed the route. At the dinner table, I listened silently to their chat, until I finished the last sweet soup. Wiped the corner of my mouth, and then calmly announced, actually, I have something to tell you today. I took out the forged medical report from my bag, placed it on the table, and pushed it towards Gu Jingshan. I have cancer. The porcelain spoon fell into the soup bowl, and the splashed juice spread on Jiang Wan's cuff. There was a moment of silence in the private room. Gu Jingshan flipped through the report, and his pupils trembled slightly. It's in the late stage. The doctor said I have at most 2 years left. I smiled easily. Anyway, I'm a dying person. I'll let you two be together. After saying that, I stood up. I'm going out for some air. I waited outside for 10 minutes. When I came back, as expected, I heard the two of them arguing. Gu Jingshan said in a low voice, I'll arrange the best medical team for her. You can't punish me with her condition, not just for this reason. Don't you understand yet? I didn't come back to get back together with you. Besides, you're incredibly cruel and selfish. My husband was silent. Jiang Wan's evaluation of him must have been a blow to his heart. The success rate of saving the marriage increased by 20%. I laughed coldly. It was a bit too easy. 17, as I had imagined. Jiang Wan didn't leave. Instead, she volunteered to stay and take care of me during my illness. I didn't have any illness at all. It was all a conspiracy with the doctor, the same doctor who forged the miscarriage report in the previous cycle. His name was Li Jin. He was a top student with a gentle and refined temperament. He looked more like a good person than that Professor Jiang. As soon as he saw Jiang Wan, who accompanied me for the re-examination, his eyes lit up. I knew what that signal meant. Sure enough, Li Jin started to pursue her relentlessly. Actually, I didn't think much of him, but from the way he looked, it seemed that he was sincere. After a few months of coming and going, Jiang Wan actually started dating him. Gu Jingshan naturally also learned about this. He turned the page of the book calmly, but the corner of the page was crumpled. I lay down and pretended to be weak to brainwash him. I've never seen Miss Jiang smile so happily. As long as she can be happy. My husband was silent, lonely, and lovelorn on this night. I reached out from under the quilt, unceremoniously turned off the light, closed my eyes with my back to him, and a sweet smile hung on the corner of my mouth. After all, my success rate had just soared. 18. I held the straw and slowly stirred the fruit and vegetable juice in the cup. The green color was smeared on the cup wall, swirling into a shallow arc. The plan this time was just one word: delay. In other words, it was like boiling a frog in warm water. Once Gu Jingshan was cooked, he could no longer jump out of this pot. So far, everything was going smoothly. The success rate of saving the marriage in the system had reached Shinjiaoi. Jiang Wan propped her cheek and looked at me. You look at the upper left corner from time to time. I've been wondering, is there something there? My hand paused. The stirring straw scraped against the cup wall, making a slight sound, and my breathing also stopped. After 9 cycles, this was the first time someone had asked me this. Actually, I've always been a bit jealous of you. She suddenly smiled. This was simply a fantasy. You're very smart and very tough. Well, of course, you're also very gentle. Jiang Wan said softly. You have all the things I don't have: smart, strong, gentle. She actually had such an idea. And your eyes can speak. Many times, I feel that you can understand what I'm thinking. She looked at me with those bright eyes. Do you know that? It's you who don't know, Jiang Wan. You don't know what a selfish and sick person you're facing. A person who just wants to survive and thus resorts to any means, who can only monitor, calculate, and manipulate everything around her, and who can only take advantage of your kindness. A person who wants to live so much that she wants to die. I couldn't speak for a long time, and just at this moment, a familiar figure walked past the glass window, with a lover snuggling beside him. Jiang Wan had her back to the window and couldn't see. I stared fixedly at that figure and suddenly stood up. Jiang Wan, wait for me here. I'm going to the bathroom, Jiang Wan said from behind. There's a bathroom in the store but I had already walked out quickly. 19. On the street, Li Jin's hand was on the girl's shoulder. The two were very close, as if there was only each other left in the world. I caught up with him and blocked their way. Li Jin, he was slightly stunned, then frowned, and his eyes dodged for a moment. Mrs. Gu, what a coincidence. Who is this? I motioned to the young girl beside him. If Jiang Wan finds out. Li Jin sighed impatiently and said coldly, we've broken up. What? Broken up? Why didn't Jiang Wan tell me? Why did she break up with you? He seemed to have heard a ridiculous question and sneered. Jiang Wan has congenital heart disease. She actually told me so late. What if it affects childbearing in the future? My family has had only one son for 3 generations. Slapdash, there was a crisp sound. My palm hit his face hard. I was so angry that my voice trembled. Who do you think you are? How dare you treat her like this? He was slapped and turned his head, glaring at me with a mixture of shock and anger, covering his face. I coldly turned to the girl who was so frightened that her face turned pale. Did you hear that? If you're still a woman, dump him. Then I clenched my still slightly trembling and numb palm and turned around without looking back and left. When I returned to the coffee shop, Jiang Wan was holding a mug, sipping hot cocoa, and there was a circle on her upper lip. There was a beautiful booklet on the table. You were gone for a long time. Actually, there's a bathroom in the store. She pointed to the pictures of the scenic spots in the brochure and smiled. Do you want to go hiking tomorrow? Didn't Li Jin say last time that you need more exercise? Of course, if you're tired, I'll approve taking the cable car. I looked at her and slowly understood. She didn't want to affect my remaining happiness, my marriage that had brought happiness to no one. 27 years ago, when I was still in love with Gu Jingshan, there were a lot of obstacles. Jiangwan mentioned him in front of me for the first time as we walked up the long mountain path. This topic should have been a forbidden zone for us, like the flood blocked by an artificial dam, although we couldn't see it. We knew clearly that it was waiting to destroy everything. And now the embankment was loosening, and a trickle of water was flowing out. We agreed to elope abroad, but on that day, he didn't show up. I couldn't contact him and thought there was some accident, so I went to the Americas first to wait. It wasn't until I heard about his wedding that I realized I was dumped. My pupils trembled slightly. I didn't know that the original version of the story was like this. In my imagination, Jiangwan was the one who proposed to break up, went overseas, and left everything behind. Jiangwan continued calmly, at that time, I left everything and came to a foreign country, only to face such an ending. I thought about cutting my wrists and secretly hated you, whom I had never met. Later, perhaps because I was afraid of death, I survived and found that I was living very well, better than before. Finally, I couldn't help but think about you. I wondered what kind of person Gu Jingshan's wife would be. Was she okay? My legs seemed to be filled with heavy lead water. I walked slower and slower until I stopped. Jiangwan walked up 2 steps. Realizing that I wasn't following, she turned around and reached out her hand to me. Tired? Come on, I'll pull you. I held her hand, her palm was warm and dry. I always eat dinner alone, I said abruptly. Really? Her voice had a slight smile. So do I. I watched Roman Holiday 3 times in one day. Yeah, last summer, I drove around the coastline all night. There was only one song playing on the radio. I bought a pair of studded boots and never wore them once. Mine was a knitted short sleeve. I could never find the right season for it. I couldn't help laughing. Then I noticed that something in my heart suddenly fell gently with a thud. And then I finally could admit that when I was in love with him, he and I were so far apart from each other. I shook Jiangwan's hand, like 2 high school girls. My steps gradually became lighter. I bought an online course on how to save a marriage. Save a marriage? Yeah. I took out my phone and searched for it to show her. This person suggested that I be a submissive and virtuous wife. Listen to what she said. Jiangwan clicked in and watched a few videos, then turned it off. Holding back a laugh, absurd, right? I also consulted a psychology professor. I searched for Jiang Zhihui's assistant again, but his account was nowhere to be found. Did I remember the ID wrong, or was it a deviation caused by some kind of butterfly effect? It didn't matter anymore. I put this matter out of my mind. 21. When we reached the top of the mountain, the sun had already set below the horizon. Jiangwan's smile was very dim in the night. Happy birthday, Xinjiaoyi. She took out a cake in a thermal box, a bottle of sparkling water tied with a beautiful ribbon, and 2 wine glasses. These were actually the things in the heavy backpack. I asked Li Jin, you can eat this, but no wine, let's use sparkling water instead. Actually, it's almost the same, right? I took off my scarf and put it on the cold stone, ready to use it as our picnic cloth, but a gust of wind blew it away. The navy blue scarf floated towards the purple night. Jiangwan leaned on the railing and reached out to grab it. Suddenly, the wooden railing collapsed, and her whole body tilted towards the boundless night. At this moment, the system data that popped up occupied my entire field of vision. Success rate of saving the marriage, 99%. A series of blood red exclamation marks. Jiangwan, the perfect Jiangwan. The Jiangwan who had overshadowed my marriage like a shadow. The Jiangwan who I could never defeat no matter what, if she died dash. I grabbed her. The mountain wind howled, stinging my cheeks so painfully that I couldn't open my eyes. I could only hold her hand tightly, hold it firmly, and never let go. My eardrums throbbed, and my blood vessels were on the verge of bursting. I thought I was shouting, but in fact, nothing could come out of my choked throat. Using all my strength, I finally pulled her back. I staggered a few steps backward and slumped to the ground, gasping for breath. The taut string that had been stretched for a long time suddenly broke, and I couldn't help but burst into tears. Jiangwan hugged me and patted my back. I'm sorry, I'm okay, she said so. She didn't understand anything at all. I heard the sobbing in her voice, and warm, sticky liquid flowed down into my collar. Tears, no, something was wrong. I held her shoulders and pulled her away. Jiangwan's face was deathly pale. Her head had been knocked open by a rock, and a steady stream of blood gushed out. staining her forehead and cheeks. Her sad eyes were like stars immersed in a blood mist. 22. Jiangwan was unconscious in the hospital, and I submitted a divorce agreement to Gu Jingshan. As long as I can start over, she won't really die, right? Love rival. This is the most incompatible relationship between women that ordinary people can think of. However, I don't want Jiangwan to die. I left the hospital and wandered the streets, waiting for my death. What kind of death would it be this time? Surprisingly, I no longer felt afraid. It was a bit of a surprise that it didn't end immediately. Early the next morning, before it was fully light, Li Jin called. Gu Jingshan had been looking for me all night, contacting major hospitals, hotels, transportation hubs, and even calling the police, which led to the exposure of the fact that I had faked a cancer report. He would definitely sign. I ate the birthday cake that Jiangwan had put in a thermos box. Swallowing the cream in big mouthfuls, sitting on the embankment, I watched the city slowly wake up in the rising sun. On the other side of the river was my school. Behind the glass building that shone brightly in the morning light was my old home that had been demolished. I recognized all the memories. Before falling in love with Gu Jingshan, before marrying Gu Jingshan, the trace of that me had become so faint that it was no longer visible. It turned out that Xin Zhaoyi had already died before entering the cycle. Why did heaven make me start over again and again? Perhaps because I made mistakes again and again. 23. I woke up again, April 20th, Wednesday, 15:10. I made a sumptuous dinner for myself, and the cufflinks were put up for sale in the second-hand market, fetching a considerable amount. When Gu Jingshan came back, I had already gone to bed, in a half-asleep and half-awake state. He approached with the moisture from the shower, kissed me on the ear, and asked in a low voice, "Are you angry?" I opened my eyes and stared at him for a long time. His long, slender eyebrows, drooping, moist eyelashes, and eyes with a faint glimmer like obsidian. In his gradually puzzled expression, I smiled without any burden. None of this mattered anymore, whether it was my marriage or the death that followed. This was not laziness or depression, on the contrary. I felt that every inch of my body was full of vitality, as if I had never lived before. In Jiang Zhihui's course, there was such a lecture. 10% of life is what happens to you, and the other 90% is your reaction to it. Then, this rebirth system where divorce means death has, in a sense, become immortality for me now. 24. Early the next morning, I contacted Song Rong, a former classmate and colleague. She still worked at M.W. Production Company and had been promoted to the position of Project Development Manager. I expressed my intention to return to the workplace to her. She was very pleasantly surprised and gave me an internal referral quota. It was settled just like that. I sent a text message to Gu Jingshan, briefly informing him of the situation. He didn't reply. At night, Kongwen and Mom will come to stay for a few days next month. Yeah, my eyes never left the screen, and the keyboard clattered as I prepared for the written test. Songwen's birthday, you make preparations in advance. Okay, don't make mistakes at the family dinner. I've already prepared the gift. You just say it's your thought at that time. Yeah, Xin Zhaoyi, what did I just say? I came back to my senses, like a middle school student being called by the teacher, blinking at him guiltily. Gu Jingshan sighed. I can't figure out the meaning of you going back. You don't need money, and you're not at an age to fool around anymore. I need money. I shrugged, and I'm immortal. This wasn't nonsense. How much do you need? He frowned slightly. I knew what he meant and just shook my head. I don't want yours, unless it's divorce alimony. It was a joke. I wouldn't live to receive the divorce alimony. But Gu Jingshan's face turned, and he had no sense of humor. 25. The written test and interview went smoothly. After 7 years, I returned to the workplace and did odd jobs under my former classmates. I felt very good. Even small things like ordering coffee were interesting to do. However, Song Rong seemed to be in some trouble. After several meetings, I understood that it was a problem with the script copyright. Copper Camel Lane was the swan song of playwright teacher Yutsun. Many film companies were fighting over it during this period. The threshold of her house had probably been trampled flat. The good news was that the copyright hadn't been sold to any company yet. The bad news was that M.W. had also been firmly rejected by teacher Yutsun. She said that today's young people lack attitude. Aren't we respectful enough? Do we have to kneel on the ground and beg her? The male screenwriter in charge of following up was very resentful. Can I try? I raised my hand. Teacher Yutsun was very difficult to deal with. The degree of difficulty was as high as her talent. I stayed up all night to read her swan song and was completely in awe. Copper Camel Lane told the story of a middle-aged woman struggling in the times, gradually losing her marriage, job, and friendship. The ending was that after a fatal betrayal, she held back her tears, raised her head, and walked towards the next battlefield alone and firmly. The rough, tough, and morally imperfect image of the protagonist had been lingering in my mind since that day. It took more than 5 hours to drive to and from the company and the teacher's hometown. As soon as Teacher Yutsun heard my intention, she pulled a long face and refused to see me. I carried through the docility I had learned in marriage to the end and visited her unshakably. Finally, after being shut out for half a month, when she saw my face again, she snorted and turned around to go in. But the door wasn't closed, leaving a crack. There was a glimmer of hope behind the crack. Cold looks, it didn't matter. I had a thick skin. Sarcasm was even easier. When she asked me to take out the trash, I even cleaned the trash can spotlessly. While being docile, I couldn't forget to improve myself. She liked watching ball games, so I made up for the videos and memorized the knowledge points hard. When she was watching the program, I casually commented a few words and received the look of "this little girl is actually a bosom friend." Another half-month later, our relationship had developed to the point where she invited me to watch the game with her. 26. It was already late at night. Song Rong opened a canned coffee and looked at me, who had just returned to the company and was half dead with exhaustion, half jokingly, "With your perseverance, you'll succeed in anything." She didn't know that compared to everything I had experienced with Gu Jingshan, these were nothing. Only this ending isn't good. The male screenwriter sipped his tea and patted the script. It would be better to change it to making up with friends and making a comeback in career, at least remarrying the ex-husband. The current version is too negative. I think it may be because Teacher Yutsun has never married in her life. Change it to a happy ending. My eyebrows twitched. Although it was a safer plan, wouldn't it completely dissolve the soul of the original work? That's why today's cultural and art practitioners, suddenly, I understood the attitude problem that Teacher Yutsun mentioned. I grabbed my bag. "Sister Lu, I'm going back first." I left their confused voices behind and rushed home in a hurry, rolled up my sleeves, and made some side dishes for drinking. Gu Jingshan leaned over from behind. This was a bit abnormal. Before, when I was busy in the kitchen, he never cared about what I was doing. "Why did you suddenly think of making this?" I put the lid on and put it in the refrigerator. "Of course it's because someone wants to eat it." "Yeah, when did I say that?" He sounded in a good mood. I was surprised. "I didn't say it was you." He left with a face again. I really couldn't figure him out. Fortunately, these were no longer things I needed to care about. 27. When I went to the appointment the next day, I took out the lunch boxes from my bag and opened the lids one by one. Teacher Yutsun watched from the side and swallowed quietly. "It's really rare for a little girl to be able to cook these." I smiled and said, "My husband likes to eat them very much. He never says it, but I know that every time I make them, he will drink a few more cups." The teacher snorted. I set the chopsticks, filled the wine, and turned on the TV. The ball game would start in a few minutes. "I had 2 miscarriages for him," I said casually. "One was when I was pushed down the stairs by his younger brother, and the other was faked." Without looking, I knew what expression would be on the teacher's face. To avoid divorcing him, I did even more terrible things. Now I think that what I'm afraid of is not the disappearance of love, or even facing my own defeat. What I'm afraid of is an imperfect ending. Teacher, I'm scared to death. Now I finally know that what's really important is the right to choose an imperfect ending for myself. I understand what you were thinking when you wrote the last scene. Since you've lost everything, don't look back and keep fighting. So, Teacher Yutsun, I promise. I looked directly into her eyes. As long as I'm in M.W., the ending of Copper Camel Lane won't be changed. The ball game had already started on the TV, but Teacher Yutsun didn't look away. Her lightning, sharp eyes also looked directly at me, accompanied by the passionate voice of the commentator in the background. She nodded solemnly. When I got home and was washing the completely empty lunch boxes, I was still humming happily. The good mood lasted until late at night. Gu Jingshan turned off the lights and leaned over with one hand propping on the pillow. His hot breath sprayed on the side of my neck. I refused a couple of times, but he was persistent. So I used all my strength and unceremoniously pushed him away. "It's very late, I have to get up early tomorrow." The charming atmosphere disappeared completely. He asked coldly, "Are you full outside?" "Think whatever you want." I sighed and picked up the pillow. "I'll sleep downstairs." 28. Teacher Yutsun, I'm going back to the meeting. Today's meeting was very important. It would decide whether the senior management of M.W. agreed to use the original plot without any changes. What are you going to do? Teacher Yutsen turned a page of the newspaper. I'm going to threaten them with my life, although I said so. In fact, I had run around in many ways, staying up countless nights, analyzing the market, interviewing many professors, playwrights, and film critics, and writing a thick stack of reports from the perspectives of literary value, social value, and commercial value. Today's young people, really. She took off her reading glasses and rubbed her forehead with a headache. I looked at her eagerly. This is the advantage of being young, you can still bet your life. Wait for my good news. Halfway through driving, I remembered that the USB drive with the interview videos was left at home, so I had to go back to get it. As soon as I entered the door, everyone looked at me in surprise. In the huge living room, there were well-dressed people and the sound of wine glasses clinking, obviously. A family dinner was being held. I looked down at myself. To drive a long distance, I was wearing loose casual clothes, and the tip of my shoes was still stained with the mud from the teacher's yard. Everyone enjoy your meal and drinks. I looked up and greeted everyone with a bright smile. I remembered, today was Gu Seungwon's birthday party. Gu Jingshin had asked me to come back early in the morning, but I didn't take it to heart at all. Before, no matter how perfect I behaved, Gu Kongwon would always find fault. With such a big oversight this time, he definitely wouldn't let it go. At the wedding 7 years ago, when I was toasting, I accidentally knocked over the wine glass and soiled my dress, which made him and his cronies laugh at me in public. Unable to bear Gu Jingshin's contemptuous gaze, I sat alone in a secluded corner and cried. At that time, a strange man put his coat on me. I felt so ashamed that I just buried my face in my hands. Later, when I wanted to thank him, I didn't know his name or what he looked like. I looked around at those cold and mocking eyes. Anyway, it definitely wouldn't be a Gu family member. Sister-in-law, you're really a busy person. Do you still have the Gu family in your eyes? Gu Kongwon smiled with a hint of mockery. For people like Gu Kongwon, sometimes unconventional means had to be used. I smiled at him. Kongwon, sister-in-law has reserved a table for you at the bar. She's also ordered several of your favorite male models. You just report sister-in-law's name when you go later. He was stunned, and my mother-in-law turned pale with anger. The noble relatives of the Gu family were whispering to each other. Where was the look of a celebrity? Gu Jingshin stood far above on the steps, and his expression was indistinguishable. I waved my hand smartly. Bye, I'm going to work. 29. With my unremitting persistence and the strong support of Lu Rong and several seniors, after weighing for several hours, the senior management finally passed the plan. Lu Rong suggested having a celebration drink, but I thought it was better not to open champagne halfway through. After all, Teacher Yutsen hadn't officially signed the contract yet. Joey, why are you still so steady? Lu Rong wailed. I just smiled. When I got home and took a hot bath, I waited for Gu Jingshin to get furious about what happened during the day. After coming out of the bathroom, I saw him sitting quietly on the edge of the bed, with no trace of anger on his face. Gu Jingshin pushed a black box with a silver border in front of me. I opened it and saw that it was a dazzling diamond necklace. It seemed to be from the same designer as our wedding rings. For me, I pointed at myself. He nodded slightly. Thank you, although I was a bit surprised. My reaction was still calm. Actually, I don't have many occasions to wear it, and besides, the occasions where I could wear it are really quite dull. On this year's wedding anniversary, his gaze fell to the side, and he suddenly brought up this matter that I had long forgotten. I forgot about it. I've often neglected you in daily life. If you've been unhappy because of this during this period, I interrupted him. Not at all. He paused and looked up at me, as if he was meeting me for the first time. Gu Jingshin, just be yourself, I said to him sincerely. Similarly, I'll just be myself. Our marriage is just like that, isn't it? 30. On the day I visited my teacher with the cooperation plan, at her home, I met an acquaintance I hadn't expected to see, Jiang Zhihui. He was sitting alone by the tea table, wearing thin-rimmed glasses, still looking like a gentle scoundrel. He and I nodded politely at each other. According to him, the teacher had gone upstairs to look for a set of treasured tea sets. I let out an and then there was a long period of silence. Has Teacher Yutsen found it? Why is it taking so long? After struggling for a long time, I finally couldn't help asking, do you have a side job online? Jiang Zhihui raised his eyebrows. I immediately realized that my question was strange and quickly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. It's really hard to find, it must have been 10 years ago. A gift you gave me when you were studying, the teacher's voice came from behind. Little Shen, do you two know each other? No, we don't. The teacher leaned against the door frame and gasped for a while, then commanded, you two, don't just sit there idle, go up to the attic and look for it for me. Zhihui, you used to love reading up there, maybe you left it there. The attic hadn't been stepped on for a long time, and there was a lot of dust. While Jiang Zhihui was looking for the tea sets, I covered my nose and looked around. It was an ordinary attic, but this beautiful round window somehow looked very familiar. I took out my phone and opened a certain social platform. In the fan list, there was a zombie fan who had been there for many years and would like each of my posts one by one. The profile picture was exactly this window. The pixel of the photo was blurry, and it seemed to have been taken at least 10 years ago. I had an impression of it because of the beautiful carvings on the window frame. I was greatly shocked. Everything was connected. What's going on with Jiang Zhihui? Over the years, he had seen all the random words and thoughts I posted on my account. In that case, the Professor Zhang's marriage repair consultation at that time, wasn't it? 31, found it. Jiang Zhihui took out a set of well-packaged tea sets from the box and smiled gently. Let's go down. The teacher must be getting impatient. The three of us sat around and slowly sipped tea with that set of pottery. She had no children, and the closest relative she had was this nephew. I kept stealing glances at him, thinking of all the highfalutin talks and secret thoughts I had posted. I was so embarrassed that I wanted to leave immediately. However, there was still serious business to attend to now. The meeting went very smoothly. I got straight to the point. I didn't even have to use the trick of threatening with my life. And the company agreed. Teacher Yutsun, are you willing to hand over Tongtua Alley to us now? Teacher Yutsun pursed her lips and didn't speak. I knew her attitude had softened, and it was just one last push away. Actually, there's one more thing I want to tell you. Teacher, I won't come again tomorrow. This was also the tactic of playing hard to get that Jiang Zhihui had taught me. Holding the teacup, she looked at me in surprise from above her slightly fogged reading glasses. M.W. is considering transferring a more experienced senior to take over this matter. I also think that I shouldn't continue to bother you, whether you sell the copyright to M.W. in the end or not. I want to say that I really like this story. Thank you for writing it. I lowered my head to the teacher and tried my best to hold back my sadness. Well, then I'll take my leave first. I got up and walked towards the door. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, wait a minute. Teacher Yutsun's somewhat annoyed voice sounded behind me. I didn't say I wasn't willing. I stopped in triumph, turned around, and there was a sly smile on my face. Teacher Yutsun angrily read the cooperation plan I had taken out several times. Jiang Zhihui looked at me with great interest. His gaze was so prominent that I couldn't ignore it even if I wanted to. The teacher frowned. As a well-known senior with a bad temper, she had been outwitted by a junior like me. She was a bit annoyed and vented all her anger on Jiang Zhihui. Boy, you wanted to see her, and now you've seen her. Hurry up and leave. After that, she waved us away. Wanted to see me. I walked out of the yard with Jiang Zhihui, full of doubts. In the late summer, the hibiscus flowers in the courtyard hung heavily on the treetops, and a few of them fell rustlingly, pure white and light purple. 7 years ago, I was also present as a guest at Miss Shen's wedding. Your dress was splashed with wine, and I took off my coat to shield you. You probably don't remember it. He tilted the sunshade umbrella towards me, his face half hidden in the shadow of the sun, smiling harmlessly. I will negotiate with your company as the teacher's agent. Please take care of me in the future. 32. The copyright contract was officially signed soon, and everything was carried out in full swing. As an agent, Jiang Zhihui was really pleasant to cooperate with. Time flew by. And in the blink of an eye, it was autumn. When looking through the calendar, I realized that today was the day Jiang Wan returned to the country. Gu Jingshan asked me to go with him to pick her up, but I refused. I don't want to disrupt Jiang Wan's life again. She is a really good person. The end of this cycle came the following year, when Gu Jingshan put the divorce agreement in front of me. I suddenly realized that this was the longest I had survived in countless cycles. Moreover, I hadn't checked the success rate data of the system for a long time. Presumably, it had already returned to 0. I held the pen and hesitated for a moment, but Gu Jingshan sighed, reached out, and held the hand that was holding the pen. He said, Joey, I gently but firmly broke free from his grip. The tip of the pen landed on the paper, and I neatly signed the 3 characters Shinjaoi. It was as smooth as if I had signed it 1,000 times. I'm just sorry that I won't be able to see the day when the movie starts shooting with my own eyes. Gu Jingshan's jaw moved slightly, his masseter muscles tensed up, and his face was very gloomy. I put down the pen, leaned back, and waited for the omen of death. Gu Jingshan, I said at last, I think I understand. What? This system, all of this. I smiled. It's not punishing my failure, but punishing my compliance. 33. I opened my eyes. In the restaurant, soft music was flowing slowly. Surrounded by flowers, everything seemed to be enveloped in a faint halo, like a dream. I rarely came to places like this with Gu Jingshan, except for the time when he proposed to me. Later, I found out that this was the place where he had originally planned to propose to Jiangwan. Actually, Jiangwan doesn't like such a restaurant at all, and neither do I. I was lost in thought for a moment, then retracted my gaze and took a closer look. On the dining table was a small red velvet box, opened towards me like a clam shell, and the diamond on the ring sparkled with a cold brilliance. My breath caught for a moment. I tried to call up the system, but there was no response from the system. There was no longer any success rate of saving the marriage. Gu Jingshan looked at the wine list with a solemn expression, neither happy nor expectant. He knew that I would put on this ring ecstatically and shed tears of joy because my dream had come true. After all, I had been looking forward to becoming his wife more than anyone in the world. I reached out my hand. With a bang, I closed the lid. Gu Jingshan's eyebrows twitched. He raised his eyes and looked at me in shock. The violinist playing beside us played a wrong note, and the beautiful meditation piece was comically out of tune. My heart was beating like crazy. I grabbed my coat, winked at him, and my facial muscles were probably trembling. Then, as if urged by something, without saying a word, I turned around and ran. The street in April had just been washed by a rain. The crowd, the wet road after the rain, and the faint smell of grass in the air all collided with me at once. I ran past them, greedily looking and sniffing, in the exquisite shops along the street, on the staggered street lamps, and in the windows of the buildings in the distance. Little by little, the lights came on one after another. I kept running until my lungs were burning and my legs were sore. Finally, I collapsed on the side of the road, covering my face and trembling all over. The rainwater on the ground seeped through the thin fabric, and a real coolness came from my skin. Someone behind me caught up, panting. It sounded like the waitress who had chased me all the way. Your bag, she approached hesitantly. Are you crying? I raised my head from my palms and laughed so hard that I couldn't catch my breath. 34. 7 years later, a sharp pain burst in my heart without warning. I clutched the bedsheet tightly, my face pale, and pleaded incoherently. The child, for the sake of the child. I carried her for 5 months. Our child had already taken shape. Gu Kongwen pushed me down. I originally worried about running into Gu Jingshan here. When enemies meet, it's inevitable that there will be a confrontation, but strangely, I didn't even see his shadow. Jiangwan was still very conspicuous among the crowd of travelers, tall, wearing a white t-shirt, and with slightly tanned skin. Her gaze stayed on the pickup sign for a moment, and then she looked at me, frowning, obviously feeling strange. I didn't marry Gu Jingshan, so naturally, I had never cried in front of a cake at a convenience store late at night. At this moment, to her, I was a complete stranger. Who are you? Although I really don't want to bring this up, but, I shrugged. Gu Jingshan's ex-girlfriend. Jiangwan was stunned for a moment, and then burst into laughter. Shinjaoi, I've heard a lot about you. Only the good parts are true. I took one of her suitcases and walked side by side towards the exit. Please don't mention it again. This relationship left me with nothing but trauma. Really? I thought the trauma you left him was more serious. Failing to propose in public. This matter has spread all over. You're the one. After breaking up with you, he was afraid of being reminded of the past and didn't dare to eat ginger for several years. Is that true? Spare me, Jiangwan. I want to invite you on behalf of M.W. to compose the music for the new film Tongtua Alley. Would you like to? Tongtua Alley. I've always wanted to write film music. How did you know that? Telepathy between ex-girlfriends. I turned my head. And Jiangwan also looked at me, her eyes shining brightly. We smiled at each other. Story 2. A villainous father who doesn't care and a dead mother shaped his solitary and obsessive personality. He became irrationally fixated on the female protagonist who once healed him. He resorted to all means to forcefully take what he wanted, but ultimately met an unhappy end. The system tasked me with his redemption, and so, I was reborn, looking at my son, still lively and kicking in the alley. Dressed in a leather jacket and sporting an outrageous hair color, I weighed the kitchen knife in my hand and sneered, "Redemption, that's just a mother disciplining her son, as natural as can be." 1. When the system allowed me to be reborn, Fu Zian was cornering a frail boy in an alley, clad in black leather, his hair dyed deep purple, leaning against the wall. He toyed with a knife in his hand, his tone cold. "Tell the truth. Or should I waste one of your hands? Choose." A quintessential bad boy with a 360-degree no blind spot attitude, the boy, surrounded by a group of lackeys, trembled in fear. However, the next second, the bad boy tried to enhance his aura by stepping onto a trash can lid with one foot. He miscalculated the height of the trash can and ended up painfully straddling it, his face contorting fiercely. From a distance, I watched and sighed deeply. Finally, with the system unable to stop me, I went to the supermarket next door and bought a kitchen knife. 2. I should have been dead. After the birth of Fu Zian, my health deteriorated, but the hospital couldn't diagnose any illness. I died when Fu Zian was 3 years old, yet, I was reborn as a 16-year-old girl. The system told me that my death was inevitable. It was to fit the villain trope of a motherless and neglected child, which led to his solitary and obsessive nature. This lack of love was why Fu Zian clung desperately to any small kindness from the female protagonist, like a drowning man grasping at a lifeline. But I had to come back, because the future Fu Zian would turn too dark. Even killing the male and female protagonists, you need to redeem him and prevent what happens next. This was the system's bargain for my rebirth. But, redemption, I looked down at the brand new kitchen knife. The chilling blade reflected a young and familiar face. I sneered. "That's called a mother disciplining her son, as natural as can be." 3. Fu Zian thought no one saw his embarrassing moment, so, he stiffly maintained his posture for a while before pretending to kick someone in annoyance and lowered his foot. "Don't give me that crap. Tell the truth or you won't have hands to spare today," he said with force. It would have been impressive if not for his hand rubbing his butt behind his back. When I approached with the knife, this was the scene I witnessed. The system thought I was furiously going to set things straight and kept urging me along the way, but I just stood behind Fu Zian and patted his shoulder with a smile. "A toy knife won't break anyone's legs. Need a better tool, like trying this kitchen knife." The cold blade pressed against Fu Zian's cheek. The bad boy instantly stiffened, slowly lowering his hand from his butt. Then, overwhelmed with embarrassment, "Damn, foolishness has its own consistency, so." Fu Zian's motion to alleviate his pain became increasingly unrestrained. He even patted his bottom a few times, feeling self-satisfied. All under my watchful eye, I sighed, thinking to myself, how did this foolishly naive guy turn dark enough to kill the protagonists? Could it be that his sheer stupidity amused them to death? System, please respect this world's villain who hasn't turned dark yet and is still full of innocence. I just grunted, then I looked down at Fu Zian's pants, split to reveal a hint of pink underneath, and couldn't help but click my tongue. Innocence, huh? The system stayed silent, for, clearly, my appearance disrupted Fu Zian's plans. Amidst the panic-stricken cries of Big Brother, thinking Fu Zian was about to be attacked, he calmly turned around, looking down from above, trying to mask his earlier embarrassment with disdain. "Who are you? Didn't you see I got here first?" I was about to speak. Just as I was about to remind him that his pants were split, an angry female voice rang out, "Fu Zian, you're bullying another student again." This was the moment Fu Zian and the female protagonist first met. In the original story, it was just a brief mention. Su Xiaoxiao stopped Fu Zian's bullying, and successfully caught his attention, but in reality, Fu Zian faced much more. A girl with glasses rushed over and began scolding Fu Zian. Fu Zian rolled his eyes, finally interrupting. "Zhang Shui, do you really think being a class monitor gives you the right to discipline me? My dad doesn't even care about me. What right do you have?" Zhang Shui's face turned ashen. I couldn't help but furrow my brow at what I heard. Just as I was about to speak, I sensed something and spun around, delivering a fierce kick to a boy who had stealthily approached me when no one was paying attention. The boy let out a piercing scream. "Damn, that's vicious." Huh, Fu Zian was startled, but quickly realized what was going on. "You never change, do you?" he said, fuming with rage. He rolled up his sleeves, clenched his fists, and smashed them into the boy's face. "If I don't beat you to death today, I won't carry the Fu family name." His movements were swift and decisive. However, the stain on his pants grew larger. Silence fell all around. Except for Zhang Shui. Feeling humiliated by Fu Ziyan and unusually angry, her voice sharp, Fu Ziyan, I'm going to tell the teacher, with your behavior, no wonder the Fu family doesn't want you. Fu Ziyan's self-assured posture stiffened instantly, his face darkened, and he glared at Zhang Shui with a menacing look. Say that again, what did I say wrong? Zhang Shui shrugged off Su Xiaoxiao, who was trying to hold her back, lifted her chin defiantly. When Mr. Fu and Teacher Qiao get married, let's see how long you can keep being arrogant. Fu Ziyan clenched his fists at his sides. He stared intently at Zhang Shui, taking a step forward unconsciously. He can stay arrogant for quite a while, considering the Fu family has been blinded more than once. I tiptoed and patted Fu Ziyan on the head, coaxing, be good, stand behind me. Fu Ziyan suddenly relaxed. He turned to look at me. You're all the same. Zhang Shui looked at me, rolling her eyes with disgust. Rich second-generation brats, really just a bunch of bullies preying on the weak. Let's see what your so-called weak have done, I said, too tired to argue further. I leaned down and pulled a cell phone from the boy's pocket. The phone's photo album was locked with a password. I threatened the boy with a kitchen knife to get the password, flipped through a few photos, and handed the phone over. Zhang Shui held her head high, refusing to look. Instead, Su Xiaoxiao took it. And her face turned pale quickly. Scum, she hissed, but she wasn't addressing Fu Ziyan. She was talking to the boy now curled up on the ground. The photo album was filled with voyeuristic photos of girls, with Su Xiaoxiao's testimony. Zhang Shui quickly realized her mistake, but she didn't apologize, still stubborn, although what he did was wrong. Beating him up like this is even worse. Besides, these photos don't show faces. Who knows who they are? Maybe he was just looking at them in private. You should apologize first for hitting him. Even Su Xiaoxiao quietly distanced herself a bit more from her. Fu Ziyan commented, idiot, you're right. The anger I had been suppressing finally exploded. The system said this was because it needed to fit the antagonist's persona in this world. So, except for the female lead, everyone was irrationally hostile towards Fu Ziyan. Laughing in anger, I said, if you think his actions weren't that bad, then I'll take some private photos of you right now. They won't show your face, and I'll just look at them myself. What are you doing? As I walked towards her, Zhang Shui screamed. She warned me. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. I ignored her and continued, until Zhang Shui broke down crying. Expressionless, I said, since you know voyeurism is illegal, why are you so sure Fu Ziyan did wrong? He's just a thug, I laughed. A thug who stops evil deeds and protects young girls. You think he's a thug, but for those girls who were photographed, he's a hero. Fu Ziyan rarely heard someone call him a hero. He was stunned at first, then looked up proudly, even agreed to surpass this so-called class president in the final exams next year when I suggested it. Zhang Shui ran away crying. Su Xiaoxiao watched her run off but didn't immediately follow. Instead, she sincerely apologized to Fu Ziyan. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you too. This improved my opinion of the female lead quite a bit. Turning around, I saw Fu Ziyan still grinning foolishly. I couldn't help it. I reached out and delivered a solid smack to his beautifully shaped head. Can't you speak up for yourself? Fu Ziyan held his head and yelped. Ow, wait. He belatedly realized something was amiss and puzzledly asked, wait, who are you? So, I weighed the kitchen knife in my hand, smiling brightly, word for word, I'm your mother. Fu Ziyan was convinced that I was provoking him, even though I could clearly state the birthmarks on Fu Ziyan's body, but as Fu Ziyan blushed and tried to stop me, he still didn't believe it, so, I asked him to call Fu Jing, but he couldn't get through even once. I watched as the smile at the corner of Fu Ziyan's lips gradually faded. After a long silence, I asked him, has it always been like this? What? Fu Jing not answering your calls? Fu Ziyan paused for a moment. But he quickly turned his head away and casually kicked a can by his feet, scoffing coldly, I'm not dead yet, there's no need for him to bother, you're quite capable. Managing to dig up even my information, he suddenly stopped speaking mid-sentence. Fu Ziyan stared blankly at his phone, then cursed under his breath. I instinctively raised my hand. No swearing. He didn't stomp his feet as usual, but gripped his phone. His eyes reddening, I glanced over. It was a photo. In the photo, Fu Jing was helping a young and pretty woman, who also showed a shy expression, probably because of the angle of the shot. The two seemed very intimate. Hey, you, Fu Ziyan called me, his face grim. He sneered, since you claim to be my mom, I might as well take you to catch the cheaters. His tone carried a barely detectable harshness. I quietly watched Fu Ziyan and suddenly asked, Are you angry? Why? The information provided by the system indicated that the relationship between Fu Ziyan and his father, Fu Jing, was not good, and Fu Ziyan had already declared that he would not take over the Fu family and would sever ties with Fu Jing once he was of age. So why was he angry about Fu Jing seeing another woman? Fu Ziyan pursed his lips and didn't speak, but his eyes grew even redder. Finally, it was his subordinate who quietly reminded me, "Today is the anniversary of Big Brother's mother's death." I was taken aback. For a moment, I couldn't quite grasp what Fu Ziyan's attitude towards me, his long-dead real mother, really was. Fu Ziyan went to the school to catch the cheaters. The female lead in the photo was his homeroom teacher. She was also the Miss Chiao mentioned by Zhang Shui, Chiao Anren. The door to the office was kicked open forcefully. Fu Ziyan, hands in his pockets, spoke nonchalantly. Sorry to interrupt your unmediated intimacy, but old man. If you wanted Miss Chiao as your second spring, why didn't you say so earlier? Today is my mom's death anniversary. I was just going to talk to her too. Let her also meet this new sister. His tone was provocative and carried an unnoticeable anger. I couldn't help but think that Fu Jing's not killing him over such remarks was somewhat paternal. Mr. Fu, Chiao Anren reacted, but I caught a quick flash of impatience and annoyance on her face. Her tone was helpless. Don't misunderstand. I was just discussing your matters with Mr. Fu. Was it really about my matters, or about you two planning to marry? Fu Ziyan, her voice was cold, emotionless, but it was as if someone suddenly choked Fu Ziyan, and he abruptly stopped talking. The man who had been facing away from us turned around, calmly looking at Fu Ziyan. Apologize. Fu Ziyan's lips were tightly pressed. He didn't speak, just his eyes reddening as he stared fixedly at Fu Jing. Though they were father and son, they looked more like mortal enemies. It's nothing. Chiao Anren quickly spoke up to ease the tension, smiling at Fu Jing. He just misunderstood, that's all. Apologize. Fu Jing approached Fu Ziyan, his gaze lowered, his tone was calm. The Fu family does not raise ill-mannered children. I could clearly feel Fu Ziyan's body stiffen instantly, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, thinking to myself, this kid verbally claims he doesn't need Fu Jing. But clearly, he cares deeply about what Fu Jing says, so, I sighed, although it's probably a problem with the Wen family's genes, but Mr. Fu, isn't it a bit too much, always elbowing out like this? Fu Jing paused, as if suddenly frozen. This outburst also reminded Fu Ziyan that I was still beside him. He turned his head, using a stern look as leverage. They pulled me back by the arm, muttering in a low voice, "Picking a fight with him at this time, even I can't save you." Fu Ziyan, who is she? It was then that Fu Jing noticed me. Previously obscured by Fu Ziyan, the normally aloof and proud man unexpectedly showed a moment of disarray. He grabbed Fu Ziyan's arm, staring at me unblinkingly, his voice slightly trembling. He repeated, "Who is she?" Fu Ziyan was taken aback. "She, sorry to have tainted your noble Fu family bloodline." Overwhelmed with guilt, I might as well have popped straight out of my coffin to apologize to President Fu in person, right? I looked up at Fu Jing with a challenging smile, then turning to pat Fu Ziyan on the head. They say with a stepmom comes a stepdad. Come on, apologize to your stepdad. Fu Ziyan inherited my knack for aggravation, but he's nowhere near my level yet. He still has much to learn. Fu Ziyan glanced at Fu Jing, then turned back to look at me. Finally, he scoffed, has this turned into a real-life soap opera? 8. My marriage to Fu Jing was a business arrangement. I had assumed it was a powerful alliance. Only later did I realize it was my parents securing a guardian for me. Fu Jing is a man of his word. After the passing of my parents, he indeed took his vows seriously, though devoid of romantic love. Nevertheless, it was for this reason I trusted Fu Jing to take good care of my son. It shouldn't have been like this. At least, I heard you're getting married to Miss Chiao. Congratulations. The concept of coming back to life was utterly bizarre. Hence, Fu Jing, regaining his composure, made a great effort to maintain his calm as he led me and Fu Ziyan away. A partition raised. I looked sideways at Fu Jing. He had returned to his usual cold demeanor, as if his earlier lapse was merely my imagination. His eyelashes quivered, his tone unusually flustered. Don't listen to his nonsense. I haven't. Fu Jing paused, seemingly embarrassed to continue. This man was blessed with good looks, seemingly favored by time itself. Looking at Fu Jing's face, which had barely changed, I smirked. Actually, it's okay if you want to marry someone else. Besides you, I never thought about marrying anyone else. Both voices sounded simultaneously, then both paused, surprised by the other's words. I was the first to recover, smiling lightly. "You fulfilled your promise to my father, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. Besides, you're still young, busy with your company, having someone at home to support you is good." Fu Jing's expression grew colder with my words. Finally unable to hold back, he interrupted, "Did you come back just to tell me this?" His tone was hurried, tinged with a hint of grievance, so, I restrained my smile, my gaze falling on the partition. It seemed like this would allow me to see Fu Zian sitting in front of us. "Of course not," I spoke softly, pausing. "Fu Jing, you've let my son suffer. The child who first called me mom, the silly boy who, when I was sick in bed, would insist on sharing my pain, the child who, before my death, made a pinky promise to meet again. After his mother's death, he endured much hardship, yet he had no one to share his grievances with." My tone was calm yet filled with anger. "You promised me you'd take good care of him." I knew Fu Jing was emotionally reserved. After all, it took 4 years of our marriage to slightly thaw his icy demeanor, but I thought he might change for Fu Zian, given their close blood relation. It was only then that I belatedly remembered the system's previous predictions about Fu Zian's fated end, unsaved, ultimately dying alone after a long wait. A nameless rage roared within me, not just towards the man in front of me. Fu Jing stared at me blankly. He seemed to want to explain something, opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. Finally, he could only turn his head away in near disgrace. "Sorry," Fu Jing spoke softly, not trying to justify himself further. Thus, my anger turned to helplessness. I reminded, "The one you should be apologizing to isn't me." Fu Jing fell silent. 9. Fu Zian still couldn't believe that his own mother had come back to life and even rejuvenated to a 16-year-old girl, looking younger than him. At first, he was a bit wary and uncomfortable, but those feelings vanished without a trace after I led him through a day of gaming. "I believe you're my real mom now," Fu Zian said, his eyes gleaming as he clutched his phone. Who would have thought that this rebellious teenager, with his flamboyant hair and followers in tow, was actually a complete novice in the game, barely managing to score. Without looking up, I responded, "You're better than your dad." Suddenly, the character Angela in the game stopped moving. As expected, she was defeated. Fu Zian said boastfully, "I'm definitely better than that old man," while hesitantly inching closer to me after a long pause. The implication was clear. After a moment, I added, "When he plays, he treats his phone like prayer beads." "What do you mean?" "Because he never manages to eliminate anyone." Fu Zian looked down at the game screen, focusing on the single point he scored, and beamed. "Then he's really terrible." Especially after hearing how I dominated the game with my full set of gear and contrasted it with Fu Jing's poor performance, Fu Zian couldn't help but laugh joyously, without a hint of guile, until the person being teased stood behind him, holding 2 glasses of milk. "It's time for bed." Fu Jing remembered my habit of drinking milk before bed. He hesitated, then placed one of the glasses of milk in front of Fu Zian, coldly saying, "Drink it." However, since Fu Jing spoke up, the previously grinning Fu Zian restrained his smile and kept his eyes fixed on the phone screen, not even reaching for the milk. Fu Jing didn't mind until our eyes met. He stiffened, then dryly commented, "You managed to eliminate someone. Impressive." I kept looking at Fu Jing. He paused, lips pursed as if slightly hurt. "Better than me." Fu Zian was still engrossed in his game. I glanced over. Oh. He was unwittingly becoming more aggressive in the game. After Fu Jing left, Fu Zian finally looked up at me. "Can glutinous rice drive away the evil from his body?" he asked seriously. I thought about it and replied, "Maybe not enough on its own. Maybe try pairing it with black dog's blood." Fu Zian was startled, then laughed loudly. But as he laughed, his eyes began to redden. He turned his head to me and said, "I thought you'd scold me for disrespecting him." "Respect is mutual," I replied, patting his head. "If you feel you haven't been respected, making some harmless jokes is okay. What is due respect? It's about having your thoughts and beliefs acknowledged. Others might find them foolish, but they won't interfere too much or force you to change. But a lot of this you have to feel for yourself. You have the right to judge whether you're respected." Fu Zian was silent for a while, then drank the milk clean. His voice was a bit strained. "That old man has never respected me." But he seemed unsure of himself. In the end, Fu Jing didn't apologize to Fu Zian that day, but he explained to Fu Zian that he had no plans to marry Qiao Enren, and he would investigate the rumors. Qiao Enren had reached out that day wanting to discuss Fu Zian's education, which made Fu Jing cancel an important meeting. He hadn't planned to tell Fu Ziyan any of this. He didn't see the need. One who does good without seeking recognition. And one who does everything for his son but says nothing, in this respect. The father and son were exactly alike, so I stretched and smiled. Is that so? Then I'll go and scold him for you. Fu Ziyan didn't respond, but his eyes noticeably brightened. He was very eager to see Fu Jing put in his place. As I went upstairs, I saw Fu Jing standing at the corner, his face showing disapproval. You're spoiling him. For the usually strict Fu family, my recent conversation with Fu Ziyan could indeed be seen as coddling. I tilted my head at him, and so, Fu Jing frowned. So I smiled. Fu Ziyan actually doesn't like drinking milk at all. He paused, his expression one of surprise. That was the first time you poured him milk, wasn't it? He said disrespectful things to you, yet he drank the milk to the last drop. It was his father's first attempt to change, and in his way, he was both respecting and trying to accept it. I remembered the pained expression on Fu Ziyan's face as he pinched his nose and drank the milk, a smile flickering in his eyes. Fu Jing was silent for a long time, so long that I yawned and was about to go to my room to sleep when he suddenly stopped me. That's how my parents taught me. He paused, unusually hesitant, and no one else taught me. I know. I tiptoed, trying to pat Fu Jing on the head, just like I would do with Fu Ziyan, but he was too tall. Hesitantly, I withdrew my hand, only to see Fu Jing bending down calmly, nodding slightly, surprised. I then smiled even more brightly. I know it all. That's why I came back to teach you. Perhaps Fu Ziyan wasn't the only one in need of redemption. Fu Jing bowed his head, and I couldn't see the expression on his face. I could only feel him gently brushing against my hand. Then he murmured a muffled acknowledgement. Fu Jing took a week off for Fu Ziyan. By the time the holiday ended, Fu Ziyan realized that having his mother become younger wasn't such a good thing after all. Because I became his new deskmate. Fu Ziyan took a deep breath, his voice trembling. Are you going to study with me? You could also think of it as me wanting to relive my bittersweet student days. I curiously observed everything in the school, seeing young boys and girls shyly moving apart after accidentally touching hands. I couldn't help but sigh. Youth is wonderful. However, my excitement and eagerness stopped after the first math class. Fu Ziyan slept through the class as usual. I didn't wake him. But when he woke up and was about to skip class as usual, I caught him expressionlessly. Fu Ziyan, he belatedly realized, and his originally fierce expression turned pleading. I just wanted to go to the restroom. You might not understand me well. I pulled Fu Ziyan to sit down, speaking softly. I'm quite competitive, always wanting to be the top wherever I go. So, Fu Ziyan stiffened. I shyly smiled, but after all, I've been away from school for too long. I don't remember much. Also, why does your math teacher have an accent? I adamantly denied that I couldn't understand, until Fu Ziyan looked complex. Our math teacher has top-grade Mandarin. I pretended not to hear, just silently passed my notebook to him. Fu Ziyan glanced down and casually mentioned the answer. Then he looked up, incredulously sincere. Maybe you should go back to middle school first, perhaps finally finding his footing somewhere. Fu Ziyan's tone carried a subtle hint of pride. I remained silent, just quietly stacking up the political science and geography books, then rolled them up. Fu Ziyan saw the freshly minted roll of books. His face instantly paled. He didn't feel he needed these people, so their attitudes were of no concern to him. As I bowed my head to gather the test papers, I discovered a piece of candy hidden beneath them. My smile deepened with the thought, probably because, to live is to be needed. I need him, and he enjoys being needed by me. I'm a bit anemic, but I forgot to bring sugar today. Fu Ziyan noticed. Su Xiaoxiao nodded thoughtfully, yet, a fleeting shadow of sadness quickly crossed her eyes. Su Xiaoxiao and Fu Ziyan had an argument. It started when Fu Ziyan accidentally broke Su Xiaoxiao's glass doll. Normally good-tempered, Su Xiaoxiao lost her cool for the first time, and Fu Ziyan, always pampered and spoiled by others. So, what should have been an apology turned into an impatient, "It's just a broken toy, if you like it, I can buy you 10 or 8 to make up for it," especially when everyone blamed Fu Ziyan. He grew so angry that he flipped a table. "Mind your own business, get lost," he barked, his fierce demeanor silencing everyone. I was sick and on leave for a few days, only to return and find out that the two had been giving each other the cold shoulder for days. Fu Ziyan didn't have many friends, and Su Xiaoxiao was barely one of them. Now, even she was ignoring him, after seeing Fu Ziyan's temper. The previously subdued fear among the classmates resurfaced. It seemed he was falling back into the isolation he had faced before, but something was different this time. watching Fu Ziyan poke the back of the front desk, intending to ask about homework. I noticed his sudden stiffening upon seeing the panic and fear in the other's eyes. It was clear he was beginning to care about how others viewed him, yet, I didn't remind him or ask about his issue with Su Xiaoxiao, until Fu Ziyan couldn't hold back anymore. Why aren't you criticizing me? Criticize you for what? Everyone says I did something wrong. Fu Ziyan was calm as he spoke. Do you think you did something wrong? I countered. Fu Ziyan fell into a long silence. Much later, he finally said, the doll got a corner chipped off. I saw how much Su Xiaoxiao treasured it. Always handling it so carefully, she cries easily, and seeing the doll damaged would surely make her cry. I intended to find an identical one and replace it quietly, but no one expected that Fu Ziyan, when picking up the doll, would be bumped harshly by someone. He couldn't hold on, and it happened just as Su Xiaoxiao returned. He spoke these words in a soft, aggrieved tone. I asked him, did you ever explain this to Su Xiaoxiao? Fu Ziyan didn't respond. You're just like your dad, I teased. Tapping his forehead, I told you from the first time we met to speak up. A mouth isn't just for eating. Those good intentions kept to oneself often end up hurting both oneself and others more. If you don't speak up, how will others know? By the time misunderstandings arise and you try to explain, the damage is already done. Fu Ziyan, you're not mute, you can speak. Fu Ziyan pursed his lips, quietly staring at the notebook on the table. It was the one Su Xiaoxiao had lent him when she learned he wanted to study hard. I patted Fu Ziyan on the head. Bowing isn't hard. See, you're doing it right now. Fu Ziyan grunted, finally admitting reluctantly that he would go and explain things to Su Xiaoxiao. But Su Xiaoxiao had taken leave, citing a family emergency. Eager to clarify things, Fu Ziyan got her home address from a teacher and went to find her. I didn't accompany him. The system couldn't resist, you know. I will teach him how to speak up, how to respect others, how to find his direction, how to become stronger. I can teach him everything I know. I interrupted the system, smiling, but I can't protect him forever. I can help him avoid danger this time. But what about next time? What if there are dangers neither you nor I can foresee? What I want to change isn't just the outcome. Hope has never been something given by others. Others' redemption is only momentary. Only self-help can truly save. The system fell silent. Su Xiaoxiao had a fall down the stairs and was left unconscious in the hospital. Her stepfather, Chen Ming, accused Fu Ziyan of being responsible. He claimed that on that day, Fu Ziyan stormed into his house and, without a word, dragged Su Xiaoxiao away. Chen tried to stop Fu Ziyan but ended up being beaten by him. Chen Ming is a middle school teacher well regarded by parents, and the neighbors always praised him for his good treatment of his stepdaughter, Su Xiaoxiao. Fu Ziyan, on the other hand, is known as a troublemaker, one who misbehaves because of his family's status. Moreover, the injuries on Chen Ming's face were undeniable. When the police arrived, Fu Ziyan was like a young lion, ready to fiercely attack Chen Ming again but was restrained. Fu Ziyan was taken to the police station for a lecture. Fu Jing was abroad on a business trip, so it was his lawyer and I who went to pick him up. Upon seeing me, Fu Ziyan's eyes lit up, but he quickly looked away. The police said he refused to say much. He only mentioned that he did not push Su Xiaoxiao. The hospital said the girl's injuries aren't serious, but for some reason, she hasn't woken up yet. The parents are open to settling privately. So Miss Wen, what do you think? I turned my head to look at Fu Ziyan. He didn't want to look at me, but I tapped him firmly on the head. Fu Ziyan winced and held his head, his eyes red as if he had just cried. Fu Ziyan, I looked into his eyes, my tone serious. I'll ask you just one question. Did you do this? No, louder. So Fu Ziyan gritted his teeth and said, I didn't. All right, I nodded, then told the lawyer, we won't settle. I believe in him, and that he wouldn't lie to me. Settling would imply guilt, but Fu Ziyan is innocent. He needs to walk out of here with his integrity intact. Fu Ziyan looked up in surprise. He seemed to want to say something, but tears fell heavily instead. He raised his hand to wipe them, but the more he wiped, the more they flowed. Normally as fierce as a spiky little lion, he now looked pitifully tearful. I sighed. While hugging Fu Ziyan, I couldn't help thinking it was time to get his exaggerated hairstyle trimmed. The smell of hair gel was really affecting the mood, but I did hit that bastard. After crying for a while, Fu Ziyan said hoarsely. He belatedly realized his impulsiveness and seemed nervous. Does that make a big difference? He paused, hesitated, and looked at me, his voice low and lost. I didn't mean to. I had told Fu Ziyan countless times before that violence wasn't the solution, even showing him many examples. Our weekend relaxation at home also included watching legal education shows together. I was relieved he at least remembered my words. What if it happened again? Would you still hit him? Fu Ziyan didn't even think. It would be best to do it before the police arrived, leave him half dead. He gritted his teeth, feigning fierceness, but in reality, Fu Ziyan had held back. In the original storyline, Fu Ziyan had left Chen Ming paralyzed. That day the system had asked said. Fu Ziyan hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. I can't say. I respected his decision. 14. The next day, rumors had spread throughout the school. The tipping point was an audio clip submitted by Zhang Shui. In the audio, Fu Ziyan's voice was ferociously clear. I will make sure Su Xiaoxiao regrets this. Crying, Zhang Shui said, that day, Xiaoxiao was worried that Fu Ziyan would lose his temper out of embarrassment. I never imagined he could be so ruthless. Xiaoxiao had always been good to him, and it was clearly Fu Ziyan who was at fault that day. It's all my fault for not standing up sooner. Would Xiaoxiao have been spared if I had? This convinced many that Fu Ziyan was seeking revenge. What was initially indifference turned into loathing and hostility. Even though some tried to defend Fu Ziyan, their attempts were quickly suppressed, without evidence to prove Fu Ziyan's innocence. And with Su Xiaoxiao still unconscious, the only person who knew the truth couldn't speak, but Fu Ziyan remained silent. Soon after, he was wrongfully accused of cheating on an exam. He had achieved the 10th rank in his class in the recent midterm exam. I understand that Fu might want to impress the girls, Qiao Enren said to Fu Jing, frowning, but that doesn't justify it. She didn't finish her sentence, but the implication was clear. Qiao Enren expected Fu Jing to reprimand Fu Ziyan as usual and then comfort Fu Jing herself, but this time, Fu Jing merely looked at her quietly. Does teacher Qiao have any evidence when making these claims? Qiao Enren was taken aback. She quickly masked her panic with a smile. Though it's just a speculation, Fu has never paid attention in class, and in such a short time, since it's just speculation, what basis does teacher Qiao have to assert that he definitely cheated? Qiao Enren couldn't maintain her embarrassed smile, especially when Fu Jing asked Fu Ziyan in front of her, did you cheat? His tone was typically indifferent but now carried a protective edge. It was the same scenario. Fu Ziyan hesitated for a second before responding with the same answer. I did not. Good. Fu Jing nodded, his expression icy as he turned to Qiao Enren. It's quite inappropriate for a teacher to slander a student without any evidence. Teacher Qiao, I expect you to apologize to my son in front of all the students. This was the first time Fu Jing publicly acknowledged Fu Ziyan as my son. Fu Ziyan stiffened, his face flushing red, but he held his head high. With his striking hair color, he looked like a rooster victorious in battle. I couldn't help but laugh at my own thought, then turned and left. If the kid's father is stepping up, I need to as well. It wasn't long before many of Fu Ziyan's classmates came to the office to vouch that he hadn't cheated. Among them were several who had asked Fu Ziyan for help or had eavesdropped on his lessons. He had a knack for scientific thinking. Even with a poor foundation, he quickly grasped concepts if he put his mind to it. Initially, some were afraid to approach him, but seeing how Fu Ziyan, even when exasperated to the point of banging his head against the desk, never refused to help, gradually eased their fears. Despite calling them fools, Fu Ziyan never turned anyone away. Some were close friends with Su Xiaoxiao. They mentioned how Su Xiaoxiao had spoken of Fu Ziyan standing up for a girl. Actually, we never really believed what the class monitor said, they admitted, because after that day, Xiaoxiao stopped talking to the class monitor. It was these people who continually spoke up for him during his ordeal, though they were still somewhat intimidated by Fu Ziyan. From a distance, I saw Fu Ziyan standing stiffly. He seemed a bit lost, his eyes reddened. Then, when no one was looking, he quietly lowered his head. That's enough, I thought. 15. The complete reversal happened the day Su Xiaoxiao woke up. The first thing she did upon regaining consciousness was to report Chen Ming for harassment. Originally, there was a scene where Fu Ziyan protected Su Xiaoxiao, but at that time, no harm had come to her. Grateful to Fu Ziyan and feeling guilty that his attempt to protect her almost led to serious trouble, she treated him even better afterward. This, in turn, only fueled Fu Ziyan's possessiveness towards her. The system said the original special plot couldn't be changed, so I had to try and alter the path leading to that story's conclusion. Fortunately, I succeeded. The truth finally came to light. That day, Fu Ziyan had intended to clear things up with Su Xiaoxiao. Unexpectedly, he stumbled upon Chen Ming behaving indecently with Su Xiaoxiao. No one could have imagined that Mr. Chen, who appeared gentle and cultured, teaching and nurturing at school, was secretly harboring sinister intentions towards his own stepdaughter. Fu Ziyan wanted to take Su Xiaoxiao away, but was stopped by Chen Ming. In the scuffle, Su Xiaoxiao fell down the stairs. In a panic, Fu Ziyan called an ambulance, not anticipating that Chen Ming would preemptively call the police and falsely accuse him. With Su Xiaoxiao's testimony, Chen Ming was arrested. He had been confident that Su Xiaoxiao would not dare to speak out about the incident. At the time of his arrest, Chen Ming was in the process of assaulting Zhang Shui, due to a previous loss of face caused by Fu Ziyan. Combined with Su Xiaoxiao's deliberate distancing, Zhang Shui harbored resentment against Fu Ziyan and colluded with Chen Ming. But she didn't anticipate that her actions would ultimately harm herself. When she was rescued, Zhang Shui was on the verge of a breakdown, yet no one sympathized with her. Qiao Anren, who had previously falsely accused Fu Ziyan of cheating on a test but refused to apologize, was also disciplined by the Education Bureau. Later, she was reported for trying to seduce a student's parent and for spreading inappropriate comments among the student community. Qiao Anren could no longer remain at the school. She got what she deserved. On the day the disciplinary document was issued, I took a copy of a letter to find Fu Ziyan. Recently, wherever he went, he received looks of guilt mixed with admiration. Annoyed, Fu Ziyan decided to find a quiet place to be alone. When I found him, he was watching people play basketball. Su Xiaoxiao asked me to say sorry to you. I sat down next to him, turned to look at him, and asked, "So, why did she fall down the stairs that day?" Fu Ziyan turned his head to look at the basketball court, just when I thought he wouldn't answer. Fu Ziyan spoke softly. "That day, she actually wanted to die along with Chen Ming." I was stunned by his response, not expecting such an answer. Then I suddenly remembered that Su Xiaoxiao's mood seemed particularly off during that time. The glass doll was a gift from Su Xiaoxiao's father to her. It was damaged when Chen Ming, drunk one night, broke it. I wanted to take Su Xiaoxiao away, but Chen Ming threatened to report that I was eloping with Su Xiaoxiao and even boasted about extorting money from her father. I could see that Su Xiaoxiao was truly desperate then. So, crying, she apologized to me, saying she had dragged me into this. Fu Ziyan began to talk more openly. He said he didn't dare tell the police about this. He was worried that if he exposed these things first, Su Xiaoxiao wouldn't be able to handle the shock upon waking up. She's a young girl, already frightened and desperate about what happened. Now, with the so-called victim blaming, if she wakes up and hears some harsh words. Fu Ziyan ruffled his hair. He wanted to wait for Su Xiaoxiao to wake up and decide for herself. And what if Su Xiaoxiao wakes up and doesn't want to reveal these things? I asked him, if Su Xiaoxiao chose to hide the truth, then no one would know what really happened that day. The undeserved blame would remain on Fu Ziyan. Fu Ziyan paused and then gave me a wry smile. I hadn't thought that far. But I'm a guy, and I can probably handle pressure better than a girl. Didn't you once say I was a hero? You know, I found being a hero quite interesting. Saying this, Fu Ziyan's eyes sparkled. He had already prepared himself to take the blame. He also remembered how I had first called him a hero when we met. My nose suddenly tingled, and then I pinched his face hard, almost through gritted teeth. Idiot. What kind of foolish son do I have? What's the point of having parents if not to help? Don't you know my people were following you that day, and your father had already gathered evidence? All you had to do was speak up once, and we could handle the rest. How many times have I told you, you have a mouth to speak? If there's a next time, I'm just afraid that if I spoke up, I might not be able to handle people insulting me. Fu Ziyan suddenly interrupted me. He hastily bowed his head, his voice choked. I'm really not as strong as you think. Once the barrier of his grievances was broken, it poured out uncontrollably. So, Fu Ziyan decided not to break that barrier at all, keeping it tightly sealed. It was a naive, childish, and foolish thought, but it was endearing and deserved to be taken seriously. Why do you have to be so strong? I asked him, or rather, have you ever thought about why I came back to life? Fu Ziyan was taken aback. It's because a mother saw her precious son being wronged. He's so kind and sensible. Why should he suffer so much? The tragedies forced upon him filled me with anger and pain. Nobody is born wanting to be the villain. I blinked, suppressing the sourness in my throat, and continued. So I came back to be the support my son needs. If he has to be this strong, doesn't that make me a rather useless support? Fu Ziyan recovered his composure. He looked down, his voice muffled. What if I'm not as good as you think? What if, when we first met, I wasn't stopping that boy from taking unauthorized photos, but was actually just bullying someone? Fu Ziyan's voice trembled. Then I would scold you. and even say harsh things out of anger. Like how could I have such a disobedient son? I noticed Fu Ziyan's hands clenched tightly on his knees. He was nervous, so I smiled sincerely and said, "But I will never give up on you. I'm glad, you are even better than I imagined." His clenched hands gradually relaxed. Fu Ziyan, with a nasal voice, said, "But you are as good as I imagined." "What? Once, when I was under anesthesia and didn't wake up, I dreamed you came to see me. You asked why I'm here. And I said because I missed you." Fu Ziyan broke into a smile. "Actually, during that time I was always causing trouble, and Grandma and Grandpa didn't like me." "No, that's wrong. Nobody liked me then. I thought you would scold me too, and tell me to go back and be a good kid. But you just told me to go back and eat well." My vision blurred. I laughed along. "So, did you listen to me in your dream?" "Yes," Fu Ziyan sniffed, trying to appear proud. "I woke up that day and ate several big bowls of rice." He paused, then said softly and shyly, "Mom, I really missed you." This was the first time Fu Ziyan called me Mom. It made me want to hug him and cry, but that would be too embarrassing, so I casually threw him the letter in my hand. "So your mom came back with a gift to see you." It was a letter taking Qiao Enren to the Education Bureau. Everyone signed it except for Zhang Shui, including Su Xiaoxiao. Fu Ziyan stared blankly at it, then stubbornly said, "I don't need their validation." But the corners of his lips curled up, and his eyes sparkled. He made me laugh. "Then perhaps you need a second gift." "What?" I handed him the ongoing phone call. His expression tensed as he guessed something, until a very clear "I'm sorry" came through the phone. Fu Ziyan's hand holding the phone stiffened. He looked at me almost helplessly. Opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. "Keep listening," I mouthed for him to continue. Fu Ziyan pursed his lips, his expression extremely serious. But the next sentence didn't come through the phone. I thought about it. Maybe these words should be said in person. A familiar voice came from behind, accompanied by barely noticeable breaths. Fu Ziyan swiftly turned around, disbelieving. Fu Jing, usually very reserved, looked somewhat awkward when meeting his son's eyes. He glanced at me involuntarily, but I deliberately turned away, so Fu Jing sighed helplessly, his face as serious as Fu Ziyan's. The words he spoke sounded like those memorized for a company's annual summary, making Fu Ziyan visibly disdainful. He probably knew he wasn't speaking well, so he pursed his lips, but soon, a clear smile spread across his eyes. He said, "I'm proud of you, and I will always love you." The words were emotionally charged, but Fu Ziyan, when dealing with his father, always seemed a bit clueless, so he quickly stepped out of the emotional atmosphere and then turned to me very seriously and asked, "Mom, is sticky rice and black dog blood no longer enough to drive away the evil from him?" Fu Jing's face darkened instantly. My laughter was loud. "But now, it's quite nice," I thought to myself. On the day Fu Ziyan graduated, Fu Jing, as the representative of outstanding students' parents, gave a speech on stage. Fu Ziyan secretly recorded it and then ranted to me wildly. Why does he still look young but acts and speaks like an old stubborn man? If it weren't for his decent looks, I bet half the audience would have fallen asleep. "Mom, have you really not considered finding me a stepdad? Since you've been reborn, why not try someone else? The wildflowers out there smell so sweet." After this heart-to-heart, the relationship between father and son seemed to take a turn for the extreme. I replied, "Your dad has been hitting the gym hard lately, so I'm not tired of him yet." I remembered how Fu Jing, drunk once, clung to me and lamented, "I was only 2 years older than you, and now suddenly it's almost 20, when she, what should I do?" After finally soothing him, he became so restless that he couldn't sleep and insisted on going to the gym, a scene that made me laugh out loud. It was then that the long-absent system reappeared. "The ending has been changed. Congratulations on completing the task." I was stunned. "Are you leaving?" "I will leave, but don't worry, as a reward, you can continue to stay here." My appearance was gradually returning to what it was before. This was probably also a reward. Suddenly, I smiled. "So, before you go, can we hug?" A moment of silence. Just when I thought the system had disappeared, a phantasmal figure suddenly appeared in front of me. He was looking down, seemingly afraid of my gaze, until I exclaimed, "So that's what you look like afterward. I thought you'd at least look a bit more mature, but you seem just as youthful." The system stiffened suddenly, lifting its head in disbelief. No mother would fail to recognize her own child." I opened my arms towards the grown-up Fu Ziyan. Or rather, the one destined for destruction in the original plot, and half-jokingly scolded, "You little rascal, your mom wants to hug you." The phantom figure couldn't be touched at all. but I could genuinely feel the originally cold body of the child gradually warming. He said, "Thank you," and then, "I love you." He probably wasn't used to smiling